all the years of man's existence, no matter what he has learned or been taught from generation to generation, still he carries in the innermost depths of his mind a certain fear of the darkness, a fear of the night, which is somehow associated with death, and which in actuality is the fear of death itself. Each of us in his lifetime will probably come in contact with some psychic phenomenon, either directly or indirectly through the experience of a relative or acquaintance. An experience never to be forgotten. Amos Jansen's head was cushioned on a pillow, and in his hand he held a little figurine. You sent for us, Uncle Amos?
Of course I did. Otherwise you wouldn't be here in my room, Harold.
No, Uncle Amos is no...
Be quiet! Be quiet, all of you.
We've got an epic show lined up for you guys today. I am welcoming Jeren and Roman Daniels of Supernatural Station Podcast, and they're here to talk about their incredible journey filled with paranormal experiences and their quest for answers as they do their show. So, hope you guys are ready. It's gonna get epic. Hey everybody, and welcome to the Paranormal Portal Podcast. I'm your host, Brent Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, we appreciate all of you out there, and thank you so much for your wonderful support. Remember, if you've got an experience and you'd like to be a guest on the show, please reach out to me. You can reach me at paranormalportalradio@gmail.com.
See me again, all of you who've hated me, and you'll know of my presence when you see this.
Oh, that's just a little figurine, Uncle Amos.
You'll wish you'd never seen it before I'm through. Before you die, you'll all learn what fear is. You'll learn how it feels to be alone.
Uncle Amos!
He's dead, Joyce.
Oh, no, he can't be. What's that?
Something dropped out of his hand. Why? It's the little figurine.
All right, Jeren and Roman, welcome to the show, guys. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having us, man. We love the show, so it's amazing to be here and amazing to be able to just have a conversation, man. Yeah, we really appreciate you letting us come on and just being on the platform. You know, it's great. It's a great journey for us, I think, to be here with you, and we're big fans. So,
oh well, thanks, guys. You and I first met down in Vernal, Utah, at the Phenomicon down there, and both of you and I and Don had some great talks and stuff. It was really great to meet you, but I'm just thrilled about what you guys are doing because obviously, you know, you're kindred spirits. We're all, I think, looking for answers. We're all trying to understand just what the hell's going on with this stuff. And I guess with any story, there's always a genesis. There's always a beginning. So for you guys, where did this journey start?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I was trying to rack my brain on that, and really it was a paranormal experience that kind of got me going. You know, it got my mind spinning and trying to figure out what the heck did it happen to me, you know, and it's funny when I think back on it now because it was a full-bodied apparition that I'd seen, and I was at a young age. I was like 8 or 9, and it was so vivid. Like, it was so, like I'm looking at a person, you know, and wow. Since then I've had other paranormal experiences, but nothing compares to like the vividness, the HD quality of that spirit, you know what I mean? It was so, it was like a person was in the room, you know, and ever since then, it's just like, it's like these things are real. And then of course I'm, you know, talking to my mom, and she's had her own experiences, my grandma, and almost feels like it's this situation where, you know, our family line has had these experiences, and we never really talked about it until I had my experience and I started asking questions, you know, and talking to my mom about it and stuff. It's the burlap sack that, you know, you carry on your back, and it's a family generational thing. I hate to say generational curses, but I feel like there's definitely a connection there because, and I will say too, like on our dad's side, we have Hopi, Native American Hopi Indian.
Okay.
And so when we're with our cousin, there's this weird triad thing that happens, and we've had a lot of experiences when we're with him too. And so it's definitely a strange phenomenon. But yeah, I mean, do you want us to get into his story, what happened with the apparition?
I'd love to hear about the apparition. What exactly did you see?
So we used to share a room this was at my dad's place, and we were 8 or 9 years old, probably around that age. And we shared a room. And so, you know, we had, the way that the room was situated is I was, my bed was on one side of the one wall, and then on the opposite side, like where if I was to sit up in my bed, I could see my brother's entire body, you know, where his bed was. And I just remember, for whatever reason, in the middle of the night, it was probably 2, 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning. Again, this is a very common theme, right? It's always like the witching hour, 3, 4 in the morning. Yeah. How old were we? 8 or 9? 8 or 9. Yeah. And, you know, I literally just wake up for some random reason, and I look over at my brother where he's sleeping, and there's this pioneer woman sitting at the very edge of the bed, and she's wearing like this old pioneer style dress. It's like a bluish gray color. It goes all the way up to the neck. It's buttoned all the way up. She's got her hair pulled back in this really tight bun type hair, silvery gray kind of hair. She looks very gaunt. She has like, you know, very pointy features, like pointy nose. Like Peter Cushing. Yeah, Peter Cushing, but like a female version, right? That kind of look. And she's sitting there at the very edge of my brother's bed, and she's pulling the covers over his feet, like as a way to like, I guess keep his feet warm or something. Yeah. And I'm sitting there observing. I'm like, and so my dad, we had a stepmom, and I'm sitting there trying to rack my brain. Is this my stepmom for like 2 seconds, right? Because that's the only woman that is in this house.
Sure.
And it wasn't her. And it was so vivid, and she was slightly see-through. It's weird because when I watch Ghostbusters, the original one, there's that lady that's down in the library at the very beginning. Yeah, that's a scary scene about that brings back weird memories, because there's something similar to it. Like that, the way that woman looked, that ghost was very similar in a way where she was slightly see-through and you could kind of see color and stuff. But I'm sitting there looking at this apparition, and she's clearly being able to move objects, right? Like she's pulling the covers over my brother's feet, which was weird too. And then I get terrified, like super scared, and she looks at me. All of a sudden she looks over right at me. So now, slow turn. That was the scary part. So like she is interacting in our world in a way that, you know, I haven't since had that with ghosts really. Like we've had our own ghost experiences, but this is the one that was the most interactive.
Right.
And she looks at me, and I freak out. I pull the covers over my head, and then I start praying and asking for help, you know, because I'm like, is this an evil thing? Like, I don't know what she's going to do to me. And then, you know, probably 5 seconds, 10 seconds later, I pull the covers back down, and she's gone. So, but this whole story will come full circle because I have more to tell, but I don't know if you want to just real quick. So this is Jeren now. We sound very similar, as you guys know. We're twins, so.
Sure.
Yeah, so it's funny. When I was the one getting the covers pulled over my feet, it's funny now because I have this psychological thing where I literally can't have my feet outside the covers. I didn't even realize that, but I just can't sleep without my feet being covered with the blanket. And so I wonder if that has something to do with it. I think it wasn't a menacing thing for sure. Like once we get back at that conversation, it's and we'll talk about our dad's connection to it. But it was one of those things where, why did she choose me? That's the first thing, because that's scary. But I'm glad I didn't see it. So it's crazy you had to deal with that. But and yeah, no, and it's crazy because it kind of had some corroboration. So, you know, coming full circle, and we're going to go from when I was 8 to 9 to 24, 25, somewhere in that range. And, I was hanging out at my dad's house, and this is actually a different house now because he had moved, but I'm hanging out with him, and we had dinner and stuff, and we're just kind of, listening to Van Halen and just having a fun time, having a few drinks and stuff. And for some reason, the topic of the paranormal came up. And when I was a kid, when we were kids, our dad was a little bit kind of strict, and I think if we would have brought this up to him back then, he might have scolded us and like kind of just got angry for some reason.
Uh-huh.
But now when I was an adult, when I was, about 25 years old, and I'm hanging out with him, and I bring this topic up and I tell him the story. It was like the first time I was telling it to him. And he literally goes white. Like his skin just goes pale white. His eyes wide open, his jaw drops, and he's just quiet for a minute. And I'm like, did I say something wrong? Like, what, you know what I mean? And all of a sudden he just goes, "You saw her too?" Oh. And I was like, yeah. And then he proceeds to tell me a story about when he was about the same age, 8 or 9 years old. He had seen the same pioneer spirit, the same woman. Like, he's like, literally, you described her to a T, the same woman I used to see when I was a kid. And I'm like, wow. So I'm sitting there thinking, is this like some kind of ancestor of our family that's coming back to protect the boys in the family, like from, frostbite on our feet or whatever it might be, right? Those pioneer times had to be so hard when you're traveling in a wagon. And so I'm just sitting there racking my brain. Now I got a son who's 7, and I'm like waiting for another year just to see if he ends up seeing her, you know what I mean? So
yeah,
it's pretty wild.
That is really wild. And I guess if you're going to have an apparition, that's a pretty good one to have to make sure you're all tucked in and stuff. But that's pretty wild. Jeez.
Yeah. I mean, it was a nice one for sure. And it's just funny that, we always get nervous or scared when there's an intruder in the house, right? So that's the only reason he probably was mostly fearful. He doesn't know who it is and stuff. But It definitely seemed like it wasn't a menacing thing.
Yeah.
But we've had some menacing things. That's what we can get into. And I mean, you can, I think, connect that other one though, because Roman had another very similar thing happen now that he's in his 30s.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is actually probably the most recent paranormal experience that I've had. And it's kind of weird because my son also corroborated this one. So, we were at this house that we were just living in recently. We moved out since then, but the house we were living in, we're in this basement, and the way that the room was situated is where my bed was and stuff. If I was looking up, I could actually see this walk-in closet that we had, and right next to the walk-in closet was this dresser, like right up next to it. So like, there's no room. This is going to tie into the story, but there's no room for anybody to like hang out right there. And so basically what happened was it's kind of weird because this is one where, and that might just be what we were saying off air, that like somehow when you're a kid, you have more ability to see these things. Sure. Whereas like when you're adult, it's a lot harder. But like, I kind of felt like I was in a dream state, like a waking dream state sort of in a way. But when I think back on it now, it's like, I don't think it was a dream. That's what's so weird about it.
Right.
So middle of the night, it's black and the lights are all off and everything. And again, 3, 4 in the morning, I wake up randomly out of nowhere and I look right over where that walk-in closet is and the door's wide open. And right next to the walk-in closet is that dresser, and hiding behind the dresser. And I don't know how it's possible because there's no room from the wall to the dresser for someone to be hiding there. But hiding behind this dresser is this little girl. Like I could kind of see just the partial eye and her hair, and she's got her fingers kind of creeping out, and she's looking right at me.
Oh man!
And I'm like shaking it off. Like, what am I seeing here? And then all of a sudden, the weird thing is, I didn't speak this out loud in words, but my mind said, "You're scaring the heck out of me. What are you doing?" Like I kind of shouted, like I had this anger reaction.
Yeah.
But it was a mental scream. It wasn't like I didn't actually say this, but somehow like she knew that I was screaming at her.
Mm-hmm.
And her eyes got really big and she kind of gasped and then she ran out of the room. So, and it was this little girl. She had red hair, blue eyes, very 80s era clothes. To me, it reminded me of like a Girl Scout outfit type of thing, like the pink suspenders and like the weird 80s shirt underneath or something like that. And she ran out of the room, and then I was just like pure panic mode for a while. I couldn't go back to sleep. I was praying. I always go to the pray mode because I feel like that. Honestly, out of all my experiences, that's what helps the most. And I go to I watch these scary movies that are all demonic and stuff, and I'm like, why are people not asking for God's help? Like once you ask for God's help, I feel like that a lot of times in my experience works, But anyway, so my son corroborated this story because at one point, and your son was what, 3 at the time? 3, yeah. And that he was playing in his room by himself with some toys and stuff, and all of a sudden I hear him scream bloody murder, like he got hurt, I'm like, what happened? So I run in there, and he said this little girl that he was playing with threw the toy at him. And he said this like in his little broken, toddler speech.
Yeah.
I said, what in the world? And then he proceeded to tell me that this little girl with red hair hit him with a toy and inspiration, and then she ran out of the room and ran out to the front door of the house, and disappeared. So I'm like, wow, what in the world is going on? And so I start researching this address to see if something happened, like if, maybe somebody died in the house or something.
Right.
I couldn't find anything, but it was really weird. And if I ask my son about that now, he doesn't remember. He was only like 3 at the time. So, but yeah, pretty wild. You know what it gives me thought of, Brent, is it gives me a thought of, and this is, again, I wasn't there experiencing it, but I will say that I am very sensitive in a way to like just something weird, something feeling off. Mm-hmm. So I've, and I'll tell some of my experiences too, but what was funny is when he tells me this story and he tells me the other one, it almost makes me wonder if it's like, have you ever seen The Others, the scary movie with Nicole Kidman? Yeah. So isn't that funny that like they're thinking these ghosts are ghosts, and then on the other side it's like a different plane and they're thinking they're ghosts, Right. And it almost makes me wonder if there's like something like that happening in the world. Yeah, actually, Brent, have you ever heard, I don't remember where I heard this, but I bet because you're kind of so involved in this world, right, of the supernatural like we are, but there was this one EVP that was recorded at some point, and it was like they got these paranormal investigators got these voices, and it was like a grandpa and like do you know what I'm talking about? A grandson or something?
Was it from Ghost Hunters?
It must have been, yeah.
But it was an old woman.
EVP, yeah, and the EVP came back and said, almost as if the paranormal investigators were ghosts. Like, right. They were like reacting like, oh, what's going on, right? Yeah. You remember what I'm talking about?
Well, I if not the exact same thing, very similar, but what was going on. And there's other situations like that where people have seen apparitions that look terrified to see the people. And it sounds like the same thing, but the one that I think you're talking about was Ghost Hunters, and they were investigating this old hotel, and basically an old man had built it, and he and his wife lived there. Well, he passed, and she lived on until she finally passed much later, and they were investigating her old bedroom, and they were doing like a question and answer with like a voice recorder. And as they asked the question, she goes, can you hear us? And the response when they played it back was, yeah, I can hear you, but where are you? I can't see you. Yep. And so it was like she was in her time and they were in theirs, but it was like this weird, I don't know, this weird bubble of overlap, or, like if you buy into the possibility that all time is happening in this one instant now. I think it's called, and I'm probably going to butcher this, and I always cringe before I say this when I'm doing a show because I'm probably mutilating it, but I think it's called non-Euclidean space-time, the idea that everything from the Big Bang to the final collapse of the universe is just in this one moment, but we travel through this awareness of this moment, and that's what we perceive as time. And so it's just fascinating concept, but you're right. That does come up where maybe it is like the others, where we're the ghost to them and they're the ghost to us, and and it's this weird state of basically misunderstanding.
I had been just on the point of falling asleep. Came from the servants' quarters. Emily! Emily, is anything wrong?
Well, try the door, David.
Right.
Oh, on the floor!
Maybe she fainted. No. She's dead.
And look, right beside her, there's a little broken black figurine.
Yeah, it's definitely strange. I will say that another crazy instance we had was around that same time, too. I would say we're probably 9 or 10 maybe at the time. The Pioneer lady that Roman saw, I'd just say Pioneer because we're Utah,
Sure.
It's the West and everything with that. But it's funny because when we were living at my mom's house, we were getting ready for school and stuff, and it was just a random normal day, probably a Wednesday. I'll just say that. I'm not sure, but we were getting ready, and my mom was, blow drying her hair and stuff, and we were in our rooms, and respectively, we're up on the same floor level, and all of a sudden, she just kind of stops the hair dryer because all of us heard at the same time somebody cough or like make a throat clearing sound.
Yeah.
But it was a male, obviously an adult male, and it sounded exactly like my stepdad, but he was already gone. He already left for work like probably an hour before that. And it was super loud. Like everyone in the house heard it the same exact amplified audio.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And my mom got scared. She's like, "Chris, is that you?" And I'm like, "He's not here. He left." And we were all weirded out.
Wow.
And then on top of that, we had another instance that was this. So we think there's like some kind of mimicking apparition at my mom's house because there was another time where we were with our cousin, our second cousin, and she was babysitting us. We were probably around that same age again. PlayStation 1. Whenever PlayStation 1 was like super popular, sure. We were playing Crash Bandicoot, shout out. But it was funny because, we were playing the game and my grandma had to go to Reams up the street, just a little grocery store. So she's like, "Are you guys going to be okay? I'm going to head out." She heads out and we're playing the game. And then literally probably 20 minutes, 30 minutes later, there's a loud cough upstairs and it sounds just like my grandma, like literally the exact same audio. And so we're like, "Oh, is grandma home?" And she maybe needs help with groceries, right? Because she'd expect us to help her. So we all run upstairs and she's gone. And so we're like, we all just got chills, freaked out. We threw the covers over your head and just hid on the couch together and waited for 20 minutes. And then all of a sudden she shows up. So it's just funny how that was happening over there. But
I want to revisit the story of the Pioneer woman because I have a question. You said that your dad had experienced this too. Was it in the same house that you saw it in, or was it in a total different place?
Total different place. And so it's like she's following us somehow, and that's why I have this suspicion and kind of a worry that my son's going to see her at some point. Cause, and I'm waiting for the day. I know he'll come talk to me about it, cause I've opened that door for him. He knows that I'm into that stuff. So, I'm sure he'll tell me if it happens, but it's really, and it's funny cause I've tried to talk to our family and see if there is an ancestor that maybe fits that description, in some way. And we just come up with straws, we're not really getting anything, but I do really have that suspicion that it's somebody in our family that is wanting to protect the males in the family or something, the kids,
Sure. Yeah, that's why I was curious because it's like, well, is it the same location? And then once you guys were removed from that, did that end it? But if it was different locations, both seeing the same spirit, you're right. I mean, that stands to reason that for whatever reasons, maybe it's a great grandmother or great grandmother or something, is keeping an eye on you guys. And I understand the fear involved because of course, when you see something like that, it's just, it's a paradigm shatter, and suddenly the world is a different place than what you thought it was. But it doesn't, again, it sounds pretty benign for what it's worth. I'm looking for the ghost that wants to drag a vacuum around once in a while. That to me would be epic. We've heard plenty of the tucking in ghosts, but
we're the ghosts that clean the toilets for you. That'd be nice.
Yeah, it's like time to pay the rent. Let's go.
Time to pay the rent. I love it. Oh man, that would be so easy, right? That would be the best. Then you could focus on other things and let the ghost pay the rent. That'd be amazing.
Yeah, it would be. So you both have had some pretty impressive experiences. Jeren, you haven't seen an apparition yourself?
I haven't seen an apparition.
Okay.
Myself, but I will get into a story that was very blatantly malevolent.
Mm-hmm.
It was definitely something that I dealt with that really caused me lack of sleep. It caused me a lot of problems for pretty much almost a whole year. Like literally, I was just dealing with this for and I didn't even realize it was as bad as it was. And it's funny because when you're going through something like that, I feel like the evil side likes to isolate you. So you start feeling like you don't want to tell anybody that it was happening because now you're crazy or something. And so I did feel that way. I felt like I didn't want to tell anybody that this was going on. So for a while there, I didn't say anything. And then I just got annoyed of it for such a while that I had to say something. And So yeah, if you're cool with that, I can get into that story. It was in 2018, so it was like right after my divorce too.
Oh,
right when I got my first apartment, basically.
Yeah, whatever you want to talk about, I'd love to hear about it. But if you're comfortable sharing it.
Yeah, for sure. So what happened was, I'm a property manager, and so I work 9 to 6 every day. And so I'd come home, and I'm a huge Utah Jazz fan. Shout out Utah. We're from Utah, of course. You have to be. Even if we're not the best sometimes. But so I come home one day, and this is when it kind of first started. Is I came home, normal process, eat dinner, go to the gym, get ready for bed. But I started realizing, and I think a lot of it was just me being stressed out about the divorce and stuff, that I would just stay up later than normal, those types of things.
Sure.
But then I would go to sleep, and all of a sudden, as I'm sleeping on my bed was pretty elevated. It's a taller bed, and so there's a pretty decent space underneath the bed. And just like the boogeyman in the dreams, in somebody's dreams, like all of a sudden, I started hearing this like shuffling on the carpet, like that little sound. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, what is going on? Is there like an animal in my room? He doesn't have a cat or dog, by the way. Yeah, no animals. Yeah. And I was just listening to it in my pillow. I could just hear it straight through the bed. And I'm like, what is going on? And so ignore it as best I can, go to sleep. I checked under the bed, actually, if I remember right, the first time, and there was nothing there. Mm-hmm. Then I went to bed, woke up the next day, and literally for probably 3 months in a row, I would just hear this shuffling. And it literally sounded like something was shuffling nonstop to keep me awake. And it was one of those things where I just started losing my mind, because I was like, I can't even sleep. Like, I'm hearing this shuffling. And then it got to a point when I would come 3 months later or something, I'd come home, and all of a sudden I'm scared to go in my apartment. I started feeling like a little nervous to even open the door to get into my apartment. And I'm like, why am I feeling like this? Like isolated, alone and stuff. And so then I'm like, I need to get somebody involved in this just to see if I'm like going crazy or what. So I reach out to a friend of ours that's kind of she's definitely a medium in a way. She definitely has those types of abilities. And so she comes over, and she's also Christian based. So she's, going to pray through the house and stuff and just see if anything's strange. Mm-hmm. And she had her daughter with her, and her daughter's also has a very similar sort of mindset. It's so funny. They're just talented that way. And they come to my house, and I'm like, whatever you guys can do. And they're just walking around through the apartment. It's a little 1-bedroom apartment. It's just living room, dining room, kitchen, bedroom, and that's it, little bathroom in the corner. And they walk through the house, and they're like, I definitely sense something. There's something going on. It's like something that's just trying to oppress you or something, it feels like. I'm not sure what it is. And her daughter's walking around my apartment, and she puts this little candle on my oven, and she's like, you should light this when you're nervous, when you're scared or whatever. I'm like, what the heck? And I'm like, I'll keep it for keepsake or whatever. Mm-hmm. And they keep walking around my apartment, and she literally pulls, I had this corkboard above my couch, and it had all my favorite Jazz hats on it. I had 16 Utah Jazz hats on there. Yeah, of course.
And there you go.
And I had all those sitting up there, and she picks, this medium, she picks 3 or 4 of my favorite hats that I'd wear. It was the only 4 that I like to wear. And she took them, and she said, you need to throw these away. And then she said, this little Rudy Gobert bobblehead that's in your windowsill, you need to throw that away too. Mm-hmm. And I was like, what does that mean? And she's like, yeah, just get rid of it. It seems like it's attached. Something's attached to these. It was interested in these. And then the daughter's like, yeah, there's a presence here, and her name's Sarah. I already know her by name. And she's this malevolent demon that's a younger demon that's attached to you. And it attached to you based on seeing the hat and the bobblehead in the window. And so that's why we want to have these thrown away. And I was like, what in the world is going on? And she said, she was so specific. She's like, Sarah came from the wildfires in California. And when the wildfires happened in 2016 or whenever it was a pretty bad one. She left California and was searching for homes, I guess, to haunt or whatever it might be. And then she saw my bobblehead and came and started oppressing me. And it was funny because after they came to that house and they prayed for it and stuff, it just dissipated. I literally heard no shuffling after that.
Oh, good.
After I threw those hats away and stuff.
Yikes.
So yeah, pretty weird.
Was that when you were having the dream too? Like the weird law?
No, that was way before. That was when I was married. But definitely it was a weird situation for sure.
Yeah.
I know it was just making me crazy and making me feel like I was crazy, you know?
Yeah.
So,
and I think those dark presences excel at that stuff. You know, they have nothing but time. You know, if they want to cause havoc or to wear somebody down. And I've often said this. In fact, I did a TikTok video on it quite a while ago, but you'll hear the term demon thrown around in the paranormal all the time.
mm-hmm.
And in my estimation or my opinion of it, it's extraordinarily overused because because something isn't happy doesn't make it a demon. I mean, demons are a pretty specific kind of entity. And, but I also think that demons don't advertise their presence. They won't be like, oh, you know, I'm a demon, get out, you know, the talking closet, get out, you know, that kind of stuff. They just don't do that because their whole objective appears to be to wind somebody down, to grind them down and then dominate them, you know. So it's this war of attrition that happens over sometimes extended period of time, like years. And the last thing they want you to know is that they're doing it, because once you're aware of it, then you can resist, you can fight back, you can take steps and measures to protect yourself. So they just kind of sit and I don't want to provoke anything by saying this, but like a parasite. And they just feed off of your anguish and off of your pain and off of your fear. Yeah. And until you know, and fear, I think, is a big part of that, because once you are fearful, fear is a kind of a surrender. You know, being startled is one thing, but being fearful is another. And that's basically a surrender, and that's empowering to these things. So, but yeah, I don't think they're as common as the paranormal communities might like to throw that term around, but at the same point, they are incredibly dangerous. And so I'm glad that you were able to find a resolution to that, because when they're gone, that very reaction, it's just like you can breathe finally for the first time. When they're gone, it's just like that heaviness and that gravity has changed and shifted. And so it can be extraordinarily dangerous. Usually by the time you know you're dealing with a demon, it's already really dangerous. You're already late in the game, and it's going to be tough. But the fact that you finally just came forward and said, I'm dealing with something, I need help. I need some help. Yeah,
I was definitely very depressed. And like, I just remember feeling, like you said, like nose to the grindstone, like you're just getting grinded down, and you're, and I just remember feeling like isolated, just started beating myself up, you know, like that whole thing where you're just like alone. And, you know, I know I had a house full of people. My ex-wife was the oldest of 8, so we always had people in the house before that. So I think it was just one of those like perfect like trajectories for this thing to latch on and be like, he's at his weakest point. Yeah. You know, he's like the perfect target. You know, I don't know. It had a feel to it like that, you know, and it definitely wore me down for sure. But I think you're right, Brent. You're right about that. Like a lot of mediums and stuff will come in and say, you know, ghosts are the same as they were when they were alive. Like if they were a grumpy person, you're a grumpy ghost, you know, kind of thing. And I agree with you that the demon thing gets thrown around all over the place all the time. Yeah. You know, and even like, and you know, not to throw anybody who's religious under the bus, but like they'll say everything's a demon, right? And stuff sometimes. And it's just like, hold on a sec. Like this world is a lot more, it's just that fast than you think. There's a lot more going on that we think and even have any clue of, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm so glad that you got it sorted out. You know, that's really, really scary stuff.
Yeah. Night and day, like I could start sleeping. I'd come home. I wasn't worried about it anymore. And I just remember feeling happier. I don't know. So I think there's definitely some truth to it. I don't want to put 100% stake in it was a demon named Sarah that came from the wildfires in California, but I will say that she's definitely a clairvoyant type person, and she's done other things in the past to like have some credibility. So when I had her come over, that's why I felt like I could trust her, and it really did change everything, you know. So it's funny that happened. It really reminds me of the They're Here from, you know, Poltergeist. Yeah, totally. Like how she's walking around, and it was kind of similar to that, wasn't it? She's like not as short as that girl, but yeah, she definitely was walking around doing the same thing.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Wow. Yeah, that's an incredibly epic experience for sure. So where are we going next, gentlemen?
So we have some land up in Schofield that's owned by our dad's side of the family. And when we were younger, we used to go there every year for, what was it called again? The days?
Pleasant Valley Days.
Pleasant Valley Days. It's in Schofield, Utah. Really beautiful mountainscape with a huge Schofield Reservoir. It's a big lake. And there's just mountains everywhere. You got deer everywhere around you and just beautiful. But it's an old mining town. And so 500 miners blew up in a mine disaster in early 1900s. I think it was 1901 or something.
May 1st of 1900.
1900.
Yep.
Wow.
And so there's definitely an ominous thing. Like when you're there, you're always feeling like it's like there's a heavy atmospheric vibe to it. And but then they're trying to make it fun with this Pleasant Valley Days thing, and everybody's throwing, they're having a fair and a parade, and all the cowboys are dancing at the little dance hall down there and having a good time.
It's a fun little town. The way I like to describe it is it's like if anyone's ever seen Beetlejuice, it's kind of like that Beetlejuice town, that kind of same kind of vibe to it, up in the mountains. But then there's this big lake, this reservoir, and so it's a very fisherman. A lot of fishermen love to go up there, and they've got trout and other stuff in the lake. So and you can go ice fishing too in the wintertime and stuff. So it's cool up there. But just the tragedy, the heaviness of all those deaths that took place, and so it was one of the biggest mine disasters in the West of that time, and I still think it's one of the biggest ones that ever occurred in the West.
It was so bad that they couldn't figure out who the bodies were, so they would just like stack bodies that were charred up in the old school that was there in town, and then people could try to claim them and stuff. And there was a cemetery that's right above the whole town. So we have a cabin, or not a cabin, it's a little house that's like in the town, but it's like a cabin style house, right? And so that's where we'd have like our family reunions and hang out in the summer. But there's the cemetery above it, and the whole cemetery is literally just like homemade wood style gravestones with it's 1900, everybody, May 1st, 1900. And they couldn't tell who everybody was. So some of them were just names, some of them were no names.
Well, some of those graves don't even have bodies in them. They're just, empty graves because, they couldn't actually recover the bodies, which is terrible.
So we started having the height of our ghost hunting career around there because we started just trying to do the ghost hunt thing when we were there. This is like the height of probably 2007, 2006, a little bit before Zach Bagans and the Ghost Adventurers, so we feel like we started their career. No, I'm just kidding. But but we enjoyed doing it, and we used to do like EVP recordings around the cemetery and stuff like that. And I was always the most fearful out of the three of us. I always had that little extra fear to it, and those two were always like making fun of me over it, which is funny. But we would just be doing ghost hunts and stuff over there. And one day, we went into, it's called Winter Quarters, but that's where they actually had the mine disaster, and it's just down through the canyon ravine. And it's kind of ominous too, because you can see through the ravine, and there's like this basically half-built shop that literally is just one wall left with some windows, and everything else is gone. And so it has this really creepy feel because there's just two mountains and this like random piece of wall. And so we hiked up to that, and before we hiked up to it, my grandpa said some ominous funny thing where he said, if you find any artifacts over there that are from the mine disaster, be careful not to pick it up or take it with you. And he kind of laughed, and he knew that we were very into this like paranormal stuff. So I think he was just saying it to make us more fearful of it. But my cousin did grab, I think it was an old spoon and some old,
grabbed a railroad
spike that was up there and brought it back. And so that night, after we were up there doing ghost hunts and stuff, getting excited to hear what we caught on EVP recordings and stuff, we had our two cousins that were girls come with us, and we went to the school, which is where they kept all those bodies. And we did some more ghost hunting over there at the school. And we actually caught some really good stuff at the school, which we have video of. We could even add it to the show notes or links or whatever if you wanted to. But we caught some really creepy stuff at the school. So after that, we come back to the tent. We're sleeping outside because there's a huge family gathering. So some people stay in the cabin, but the rest of us stayed in the tents. And it was just me, my brother Roman here, and my cousin Sean. And we're staying in the tent. It's like 11:30 at night. People are already going to bed. And we go to sleep, and everybody's been asleep for a while. We're probably the latest to go, last people to go to sleep. And I just remember all of a sudden it felt like there was this massive windstorm on our tent. So we all woke up at the same time because it was just the sound of like our tent being moved around like crazy with wind is what it sounded like. And so I kind of just like lean up with my eyes just to see if I see anything on the tent that could be causing that. And I was in the middle, so it was my brother on one side, Sean on the other side, and I'm kind of in the middle of the tent. So I had probably the best vantage point too. Okay. And I remember I just kind of looked up at the top of the tent, and there was literally like little handprints, like kid handprints on the top of our tent, like where, and there's, real quick to give you context, there was a street light that should have shown shadows. If it was somebody like with an actual body, you'd see their whole body touching the tent.
Canvas of the tent, you'd see
but there was no shadows. It was literally just hands touching the tent that were little kid hands, like half the size of an adult hand, and they were pressing down on the tent with their hands. And it was more than just the one. There was like 10 touching the tent all around us, like pressing in.
It's like giggling too, like. And so at first I'm sitting there thinking, because I remember this too really vividly. And, you know, I'm sitting there thinking, you know, I'm trying to rack my brain of like, who could these kids, could it just be kids messing with us? Like, you know, in the town or something, could it be someone in our family that's messing with us? But that mass, like, number of kids that were there, that, you know, those hands, like there's like 10 sets, right? Of hands. And so like, I mean, and then of course there's no reflection being cast on the tent and stuff. And literally the hands, cause where I was, it was like pressing down to the point where it's like almost touching my head, you know, like shaking it so violently. And what we took from it, and my cousin Sean woke up and noticed it too, so we all saw the exact same thing. And then in the morning, we all corroborated it again. Like, wow, can you imagine what we just went through? I just remember really quick, I was looking over after I saw the hands on the tent, and I could see like the street light and stuff. I look over at my cousin, and he's just staring at me with like wide eyes. Just we didn't want to say anything because we didn't want them to notice we were awake. And so, and I didn't know if Roman was awake because I was turned the opposite way. And then we all corroborated it in the morning, but it wasn't a fight or flight response. It was just a silent response. It was just a just freeze. Just paralytic freeze. We just went pure paralytic, yeah. And eventually it stopped, and I don't know like what caused it to stop. I don't really remember that, but I just remember eventually it stopped. We went to bed eventually and got some sleep and stuff. But I really think that it was potentially spirits from that school, like because we were just there that night. We were investigating, and we were probably being a little disrespectful because back then. Again, Ghost Adventures was on. They do a lot of that, like provocation and stuff, and we were doing a little bit of that too. And we broke into the school too, by the way. Okay. We were doing things that were wrong and stuff, and of course we treated the school well and stuff. But like, I just think that it was it's like, oh, you guys want to mess with us? Here you go. You're gonna get it's like the bull with the horns, you know. You want to mess with the bull, you're gonna get the horns.
One evening, about 6 weeks after Emily's death, Harold, Joyce, and I were in the living room. The police said they'd never be able to find out who did it unless something new turned up, and it probably won't.
Oh, the whole thing frightens me. I still remember Uncle Amos's dying words. That though I die, you'll see me again. All of you who have hated me. And you'll know of my presence when you see this. Oh, it makes me shudder every time I think of it.
I've been thinking about what he said, too, Joyce. I wonder if he could come back.
You mean come back after death?
Yes.
Don't be a fool, Harold. Once a man dies, he's dead.
Is he? I'm not so sure of that.
You shouldn't talk that way, Harold. It's frightening.
And really quick, Brent, the stuff we caught at the school before we had that night terror basically was we put our camera there. We left for about 25 minutes. And right after we left, it was a nonstop barrage of craziness in the school, like stomping, going up the stairs. It sounded like kids playing basketball. The camera tried to get shifted a little bit. So like you could even see the camera getting touched in a way and kind of slightly moved. And so we had some weird stuff happen there. And I think, maybe we were mocking them. I don't know. And so we obviously didn't do that in the future, but that's what we think it was. Or it could have been, kids trying to reach out, spirit kids that were trying to reach out to us because we were talking about the mine disaster in the school too, and showing the pictures of the dead bodies and stuff. And maybe my thought process was maybe it was a bunch of kids that were missing their dads that lost their dads in the mine disaster, I don't know, but it was definitely creepy.
That's incredible. And I think I remember that story. Is that the one?
No, actually, though, I think the one you covered was the Pioneer Lady one, actually, on your show back in 2020, I think. But
The tent one we actually had covered by another podcast, Belief Hole.
Maybe I heard it on there. Yeah, that's just fascinating.
Yeah, that's on Belief Hole and listener series 6, I think, or episode 6, and that was really cool for them to tell the story. And they have all the cool like animation, so it makes it sound even cooler. But yeah, it was definitely a weird experience for sure.
Man, that'll make you a believer, huh?
Oh yeah. So that's how I know. Like, there's definitely some weird moments with ghost situations or ghost apparition situations that you can't really chalk up to anything. It's right. It's just so weird. And all the cousins here, we were like, hey, did you guys mess with us in the morning? And of course the cousins, there's no way they could have. The ones that could have messed with us, there's only 2 of them, and they were a little older than us. But they had bigger hands than that, and you would have seen they would have fallen into the tent with the fact that they're trying to touch the tent, you know? Yeah. So it was just a weird, creepy thing. But it's funny, too, we went back to Schofield, just the 3 of us, recently, this last summer. We went back up there, and we pitched a tent, you know, same area, and we're like, let's see if we can recreate this. And we didn't break into the school. You know, we're old now. Yeah. If we do that now, we're going to get busted, you know? Yeah. When you're past 18, it's like, you know, you don't goof off anymore. But you know, so we went up there and we went up to the cemetery again and stuff, and I think I caught one of my best EVPs recording up in that cemetery that night recently. And, you know, I basically was asking, hey, if there's anything I can do to help you, like, you know, let me know kind of thing. And when I say, is there anything I can do to help, the EVP responds, the voice, and it says, you can't. And it's this really clear voice that just says you can't. It almost sounds like a British person too, because there was a couple immigrants that had come out and worked in the mine, and some of them were there's like a couple, you know, what are they called? Tombstones with like Wales and England and stuff like that on there. And so I wonder if it was one of those guys. He was standing right next to the one that said Wales on the tombstone, and his name was Watson, last name Watson. And it's funny because the only reason Roman went to that tombstone is because when we were kids, around that same time we had that terror in the tent, is what I'm coining it right now, is when we were up in the cemetery, back then, right, the first time around, we were standing by that Watson dude tombstone, and Roman was asking another question, and the dude said, it was an apparition that said, go away, in a British accent. It said, go away, like something like that. Wow. And we thought it was no way the whole time we were growing up. It's like, why did he say no way? But it was such a clear EVP again. And then he was in that same area just recently, and that's when it said, you can't. When he asked. The thing is like, I mean, paranormal investigators that are listening to this, that have had experiences with this stuff, will know. But like, there's this weird pitch change, and especially coming from podcasters like us, you're privy to that stuff. There's this weird pitch change that happens almost with every EVP that we've ever captured. You hear this pitch go, like it changes. Yeah, it's like a ring and then a frequency change. Yeah, and then it goes back to normal again right after it talks. You know, so it's really interesting. We'll have to share that with you, Brent. I don't think we've ever. No, I'll send you an email with that EVP.
I'd love to see that as well, and I'd like to set it up with a spectrometer and just to see where does that. Because sometimes with EVPs you can actually see the sound is in a different part of the field when it's on the visual display. So that's really powerful. Wow. Yeah, that's some epic stuff, guys. So. Let me ask you a question. As you're from the Uinta area, right? I mean, you're in that area.
Yes.
So, are you guys privy to, or have you heard claims of skinwalkers in the area?
We have a little bit, but it's only because we've done research and we're like really interested in like the whole Ute area and the reservation and stuff up there. Uh-huh. But we have another area that my grandma on my mom's side, they go up to Duchesne every year, which is right by Roosevelt, which is where the vernal area where we had the Phenomenon. Mm-hmm. So up in that area, that's where like the Ute reservation is, and
close to Skinwalker Ranch,
and very close to Skinwalker Ranch. Yeah. And so we've had some weird experiences up there. It's hard to pinpoint exactly a certain thing that happened, in a specific night or something, but we've camped up in that desert in the Uinta area. And, One thing I can say is when we were driving up to Phenomenon, this is the weirdest thing. Me and Roman were driving up there. We're all excited, right? And gearing up for this whole thing, not knowing we're going to meet you for the first time in person, which was awesome, by the way. But we're driving up there, and there's this reservoir called Strawberry Reservoir, and it's this big lake that a lot of people, fish at and stuff. Beautiful mountains again.
And there's this one, it was weird. We both look over to the right when we're driving up there, and there's this weird person that almost looks like discolored, like a different, not human coloring. It was almost like a blackish saturation down, if that makes any sense.
Sure.
And it was just standing there next to the water. And I was looking for like Bigfoot or something. I'm hoping I could see Bigfoot walking down the street or something. Right. So that's why I was like looking on the side of the road the whole time. And all of a sudden I just see this like weird figure that looks like maybe a very skinny Cambodian lady or something. And she's literally it's a person just standing straight, looking right at the water without moving at all. And it was discolored. And Roman saw it too, so I freaked out. I'm like, did you see that, Roman? It's weird because, like, the first thing we both said, did you see that? Like, what the heck was that? You know, it kind of just seemed out of place. And
sure.
And it really, the clothing, like it was the creature, character, whatever it was wrapped in a blanket, like a Native American style looking blanket with the print on it and stuff. Mm-hmm. But to me, I kept going Asian too, though. Like I kept thinking maybe like Cambodian or something. That was a weird reason. So I really wasn't sure what it was, and I was thinking like maybe it's just a woman that's out there just like trying to get some peace. She was like, I mean, right on the edge of the lake, standing on this big rock and just looking at the water, you know. And so we saw like the profile image of this individual, and I don't know. It just, the reason I think we both got weirded out is because it just felt off. It didn't feel like it was a normal person, you know. So they didn't move at all. Very stiff. The blanket, just the overall general appearance just seemed like from a different era, to be honest. And so I'm like wondering, maybe it was a skinwalker that we saw, you know, because that area was the area, you know, that they talk about. So, but my grandma listens to Native American music when she's up in Duchesne, and she's like really into that culture and stuff. And she came home one time from a camping trip up there, which is again really close to Skinwalker Ranch, and she said she had an issue with another something messing with her at her house for days on end, like moving stuff and just messing with things, turning on the radio, stuff like that. And she thinks it was a skinwalker. You know, that's what she claims. But yeah, pretty crazy stuff.
It has really epic stuff. I think that in the course of doing these shows, we get introduced to a lot of stuff, and sometimes it's hard to know what to do with it because it's just like, what is going on here? But that's the beauty of the journey as well, and to find the pieces in this mental puzzle and to try to sort out what does this stuff mean, because I've always maintained that it's not where reality is failing or glitching, like some people like to use the term, reality glitched. But I think it's the breadcrumbs. I think this is really profound stuff, and it's maybe part of the reason we experience this stuff is just to keep us looking, you know, because there's still mystery, there's still discovery to be made here. And while a large segments of our historical consideration have just tossed these things away, but I think as these fields are gaining momentum and they're gaining some scrutiny and some investigation, that maybe we're going to find that our reality is just a lot more dynamic and not as concrete or rigid. Like, you know, we think reality is this and it's this box that we live in, but maybe it's not so much of a box, you know? So I'm totally excited about all this. And I'm also just so thrilled you guys are here to share these things because, you know, we're kindred spirits in a lot of ways. We're both doing shows. We're both on this quest and on this information, but can you guys explain a little bit what is paranormal, the Supernatural Station, rather? How would you explain what this is and where can people find it?
Yeah, you should take that away. Right? Yeah. You know, again, we're inspired by shows like yours, shows like Tony Merkel's show. We just, honestly, we would love to do more interviews with people, and that's kind of where we're trying to head towards. Mm-hmm. Right now, it's really just me and my brother and my cousin a lot of times, and we just kind of rant and rave about these topics, and we'll cover just general stories that we find, you know, at like Unexplained Mysteries or you know, some of those websites. And it's just really for us, it's we're trying to get the awareness out there, but at the same time, we're also on the journey to learn ourselves and trying to figure out what all this means. And so that's really what the show is. We talk about everything from ghosts to aliens, you know, to, you know, cryptid creatures and pretty much everything. And so we're not like a Bigfoot specific or a ghost specific. We're talking about everything, and nothing is off limits for us. You know, we and who are we to say that someone's telling a lie? You know, like we're going to have anybody on who's willing to tell their truth. You know? Yeah, our mind is innocent until proven guilty, right? Which I think it's innocent as in we trust their situation, what they went through, and you'll be able to tell. I mean, you can tell when somebody's definitely being genuine, and I think for us, I think we're in a cool era right now, Brent, where like you can actually talk about this stuff now and not feel like it's like super weird anymore. Yeah. You know, when we were kids, it's like I wouldn't tell a lot of the stuff we went through when we were kids to a lot of people unless they were kindred spirits. But I think having this door open is giving a lot more people comfort in the fact that this world is so much different than we think it is sometimes, you know, and that's what we're about. We want to like, I wish we could uncover every mystery right now, but it's funny when you're starting to look into this stuff, it's what you always say, what everybody says. Now it's opening another freeway to another thing.
Questions and you have answers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just, it's a never ending cycle basically.
Yeah.
But
I know that when I first started doing this show, I was like, well, when I first started doing the internet radio show, I was like, yeah, I could do a show on the podcast on the paranormal. I know this stuff. I've always been interested in this stuff, but then when you're doing it as an active pursuit and you start talking to people, you start finding all these different layers and pieces, and suddenly you realize that this is just a great big rabbit hole that just keeps going and going and going and going. Like, I don't know if there is a quote unquote answer, but I think that certainly the more people discuss it, the more people, much like yourselves and the people you talk to, the people I talk to, everybody has unique stories. Even if they're very similar to each other, the beauty is in the retelling, because everybody sees things differently, and somebody may pick up one point that other people never really paid attention to and bring that to the table, and it's like, wow, it's these epiphanies. So I just love this journey, and I'm just really thrilled you guys are on it as well. I love your show. You guys obviously love what you're doing, and it shows, and I think it's exciting, to be a part of your journey as well, not just my journey, your journey, because you guys are a fresh take on it, and I'm really excited for what you guys are going to do. So where can people find Supernatural Station?
Really, you can find it anywhere you listen to podcasts. I mean, we're on Apple Podcasts, we're on Spotify, we're on Google, we're pretty much anywhere we're actually going to be spreading out to YouTube now. We have one episode on YouTube where we actually did a video version of video format. And so we're going to try to do more of that too. And so there are people out there that don't like to listen to podcasts, and they're more of the visual creatures like some of us are. And we're hoping to continue doing more video. So that'll be cool. And you can just find us by looking up Supernatural Station Podcast on YouTube and watch at least that one episode that we have so far. But yeah, no, and we really appreciate you having us on. One more thing. Yeah, supernaturalstation5@gmail.com is where you can also give us your true accounts, that we'd be totally happy to talk about on our show as well. Even if it's just a quick throw in on another episode, or if you want us to tell the full story, we want to get this stuff out, because again, it's all about spreading the word and not feeling like you're crazy, because it's awesome. And I love doing this stuff. I mean, I've had other encounters that we can't even get into, but this, it's an ever-ending cycle for sure. I'll say that. Would there be time for one more story?
Oh, by all means, please. Yeah.
Yeah. The alien one. Yeah, I really want to tell this one. So, I mean, I know, Brent, you've had your own UFO encounter, and I was pretty blown away by yours. I was like, wow, that's pretty powerful.
But real fast, let me preface this. We're twins, right? And everybody asks if there's those weird twin things that happen, right? So I'm just prefacing this at the beginning so that it kind of ties into it. Because when we were kids, I call Rome, sorry. When Rome was...
friends call me Rome in my family,
yeah.
So...
Rome was waiting in my aunt's car to pick us up from elementary one time, and my brother had one of those moments where he's like, there's something wrong with my brother. He's not here yet. Something's wrong. He goes running out to the field, and I'm getting beat up by these two kids, and they're like throwing my backpack around and stuff. And so that happened when we were kids, and there's been multiple times where we'll say the same word a million. Like if you were here, Brent, with us when we're doing our podcast, there's so many times where we say the same word at the same time, and like we have to catch ourselves because So that's the preface to this story real quick with the twin thing.
Yeah, so I really don't know how to classify this story, but I am going to just go on a whim and think that it's somehow connected to like an alien situation.
Yes.
Okay. So we were up camping. It was actually our birthday.
and there's this place called Tanner Flat, which is like a campsite up in, is it bigger Little Conduit, Little Canyon. We're up there and we're camping, and they have this, it's kind of like glamping. They have these little, what do they call them? Yurts. Yeah. Little yurts, and they have little beds in them and stuff, and they're pretty nice. And so we're camping, and there's this river nearby, and we decide to go up and hang out in the river. And there's like these little pooling pots in the river that you can kind of sit in. And it was June.
It was so hot though.
Super hot. And we're like, man, we want to cool off. So we're out there and hanging out in the river and everything. And next thing we know, it's almost like we blacked out.
It's like loss of time or blackout. Something happened to us when we're sitting in this river, by no less. So we're in the cold water, and all of a sudden we wake up, and then
and I'm like, I'm totally, my equilibrium is completely off. I almost can't walk. I almost, the gravity's all screwed up. I can't even get my bearings. And my phone is in the water. I had a little pocket knife, a cool little Damascus knife, and that's in the water. And your keys, my keys were in the water. I'm like, what in the world happened here? And we were we had to make this little hike to climb up these little, these boulders to get up to the road.
And because where we were hanging out, it wasn't like a normal trail. It was like we came down from the like where the road is, and we came down this massive hill to get to that water pot where we were hanging out in the river. And so all of a sudden we wake up, and it's like an episode. It's like, it reminds me of something where the camera's attached to somebody and they're like moving around, and you can see like everything around them is like all blurry and stuff. Because literally that's what I felt like. I was climbing up this mountainside, and I'm tripping all over myself, and I'm hitting these rocks trying to get up to the road. And Roman's doing the same thing, and he doesn't even think about where his phone or his keys are or anything.
And our shoes are gone, by the way. Our shoes are gone. And so we're walking back barefoot. It was just the weirdest thing.
And we're walking in front of oncoming traffic, and we're veering into the road and like just very out of it. Like almost like somebody gave us roofies or something is what it reminds me of.
Wow.
So this was middle of the day. So we make it back to the campsite, walking along the road, and we get back to the campsite, and we're sitting there like, what in the world happened to us today? That was so strange, right? We're talking about it, and then eventually we go to bed. It becomes nighttime. We go to bed and go to sleep and everything. And this is when it gets really weird. So I think it was a dream, but I also think that there's some truth, like some reality to it. I remember a very vivid dream, and the next morning I woke up and look over to my brother's bed in the yurt, and I was really concerned if he was going to be there. Like for some reason when I woke up, like, where's my brother? Is he going to be gone? Right? Yeah. For some reason that's what my mind was going towards because of this dream situation that I went through. In the dream situation, I felt like I was in a large cornfield kind of place. Like I kept thinking Ohio, Michigan, somewhere over there, for some weird reason. And it was like this large cornfield. And in the dream, we were staying in this, it was me and my brother, just the two of us. And we were staying in this little Airbnb, this tiny little house that was on the cornfield. And for whatever reason, in my dream, both of us, we didn't have our shoes, and we were in escape mode. For some reason, we're like get out mode. Yeah. For some reason, it felt like we were in like danger for some reason. So we're trying to get out of there. And there was this little like Jeep or truck that was parked in like the cornfield. And I'm like, we need to get in that thing, and we need to get out of here and drive off and basically save our lives, because it felt like we were in danger. And for some reason, I'm like, as we're running and we're trying to get to this, no shoes, we're getting there, we're like full panic mode.
Running through the cornfields, right?
And then we finally get to the Jeep, and as we're about to the Jeep, this thing flies over me, and it's like an astronaut. It's a guy like in a full white astronaut style suit. Kind of looks more like the SpaceX new kind of astronaut outfits.
Sure.
And the helmet that he was wearing was like an astronaut helmet, but it had like two big black eyes. Like not like the visor, but big black eyes. Yep. And it was flying over like a bird, like where it had just the arms out kind of like a bird would be. Uh-huh. And then I see a couple other astronaut people flying too. And then they land on top of a nearby building that was like a farmhouse type thing. And they're on top of this thing, and they're just ripping something off the top of it. Like it felt like wires. Like they were ripping the shreds out of these wires for some reason. And I'm like, what does this all mean, right? And like, it's so weird. And I wake up, and for some reason, like in my dream, I felt like we were separated. And so that's why like immediately I look over to try to find my brother. And he's the same moment, I wake up the same way, and I'm looking over at him like, is he okay? And the dream I had, Brent, was the same dream, except for I don't remember the Jeep truck that we were trying to get to. I remember we were running through a cornfield in my dream, and I said, Roman, I had the craziest dream. Let me tell you about this freaking dream I just had. And I was telling him about this cornfield we're running through, and he's looking at me like pale eyes because I'm telling him this dream that I just had. But my dream was an osprey. You know what a big osprey hawk looks like? The big white head, black eyes, like creepy. Very similar colors to the astronaut. So it's almost like it was like a screen memory or something.
Right.
But it was flying over us, like towering with a shadow over all the corn husk, all the cornfields. And it lands on the roof of that same building, and it just looks over at us. And that was what I had. That was my dream. And I was very scared of that osprey. And to this day, I'm scared of ospreys because of it. Wow. But I woke up and I looked over at Roman. I'm like, "Are you okay? What's going on? We're both out of it." And he's like, "Yeah, I'm good." And when I woke up, I look over and his arm's like hanging down off the yurt on one side, and mine was hanging off the other side when we were sleeping. And we looked at our arms, and we had this same little pinprick, like almost like when you get blood drawn. Yeah. We had a pinprick on both of our arms on opposite sides. Oof. And that's all I remember. But it was like we had all this loss of time. Like we almost lost, 5 hours of time from the time we were in that river to the time we went to sleep. And I don't even remember going to sleep myself. Yeah. I just remember getting to the yurt and then waking up the next day with that creepy dream.
That's incredible. Wow.
Yeah. So I reached out to this guy, and I can't, for the life of me, I can't remember his name, but he's kind of an expert on screen memories and people that have had these kind of experiences. I reached out to him, and he found our story pretty amazing. He's like, I do kind of think that, I really kind of think that it was a screen memory you guys shared, and maybe you guys really went through something. Because the other weird thing is like we were staying up late. I do remember we were staying up late that night before we went to bed, and we had a fire, like a big blazing fire going, right? Mm-hmm. And everybody else in the campsite was asleep already. And so like we were the only ones, like let's say if an alien beacon of light, like this is a perfect place to go check out because it's the only fire that's lit right now. Almost like we draw them to us if it was an alien thing. And I'm not saying it is. I just think that it was so weird that we had almost the same dream. But I will say Brent, we do have these weird things now where like peripheral, like if you had like those horse shades on, where they covered the side of their eyes, where my peripheral is now, sometimes I'll see something to the side of me and think it's like really close to me, like, and then I'll look over and it's like way in the distance. Wow. And then there's other times when I'll hear something in that same side of my face, and I think it's really close, like a car that's like 10 feet from me, but it's literally like 2 or 3 streets down. Wow. And I look over freaking out like I'm going to get hit by some car. I've had that happen a couple of times recently. It's a shared thing for both of us. And Roman has it too. Same change after we had this experience. We both have the exact same situation. And you have that little lump on your back too. Yeah, I got to get that checked out. There's like a tiny little like lump on my back. It's really small, but it happened right after that day. Like all of a sudden it was on like a little hard piece of something. Yeah, so I'm like maybe it's some kind of implant. Who knows? But
that'd be something. Wow.
We're just thinking outside the box now. But it definitely was a weird thing for sure.
Well, yeah, there's certainly plenty of people who've experienced the implant thing, and certainly the dream. And I don't know what their objective is with all of this, but they do kind of cloud their activities in these dreams, these weird visions or dreams. I mean, the owl thing, well, for you it was an osprey, sure. but it was also an astronaut. So I mean, you've having the same dream and interacting with each other in it at the same time. It's funny you should say that because I've really not heard about that. But I just pulled up an article I'm going to do on the live YouTube show, and in there is a couple that had the same dream, and it was. I mean, it's a little more sordid than that, so I got to be careful how I read it on the live show. But the idea is that the guy was having an experience, and his girlfriend was standing outside looking in the window, horrified, and he saw her, and he's just like, well, it's he was in this dream, and he woke up. And then a couple days later, she said, I had the most horrible dream. I was looking in this window and saw you doing this. And it was like,
oh my gosh. Whoa.
I just managed to find that before I made contact with you guys today to record this. So it's
how about that for a Matrix shake, a Matrix break?
That's funny because the article has to do with glitches in the Matrix.
Kindred spirits.
Ooh, we're on this wavelength, guys. We're just vibing here. So creepy stuff, but that's amazing. Yeah, I mean, and generally those things follow a pattern. Like if you were abducted, keep an eye out for any other, more weird stuff. Like where'd that bump come from? Where's that little dot from? I mean, I think we do stuff all the time to ourselves without realizing it. So I don't mean everything is paranormal, but having that experience, which is way off the charts within the bizarre. But I have no doubt that what you're saying is legitimate. It's just, what are the ramifications? I don't know. That's pretty bizarre.
That was 2 summers ago. So that's what's so weird is it's like, and it's definitely in the frame of my mind still. Like it happened yesterday, and it's just a weird thing. And it makes me a little nervous to go up in the canyon now at night. I have even more fear than besides just running into Bigfoot. Now I'm thinking about other things too, Well, I actually would like to, go to get hypnotized and see if there's any weird memories that come back from that. I really would like to. I know that a lot of people get fearful of that stuff, but there's something in me that wants to find the truth of that whole situation because I feel like the loss of time was just so strange. Yeah.
That is weird, but once you know, you can't unknow it.
True.
So, I mean, there's a gravity that comes with that too, and I've often wondered myself, like, if when I saw that saucer, if it had ended up being a missing time thing, would I want to know? And I don't know. I mean, certainly the side of me that's inquisitive and wants to understand this stuff would like to know. But the other part of me is like, yeah, but once you know, you're stuck with that, then it's real.
Could be like a Whitley Strieber situation, right? And that's terrifying. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But gentlemen, it has been an absolute pleasure. I've loved having this chance to get together and talk with you guys. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing this. And again, ladies and gentlemen, the Supernatural Station podcast, check it out. Check out their YouTube channel. I know you guys are both on social media, but do you have a Supernatural Station's Facebook?
We have an Instagram that's a little bit more active. So yeah, if you look us up on Instagram, you'll find us, and we appreciate, the followership and anybody who just lends an ear or an eye to us. We appreciate it. And thanks, Brent, for having us on. It's been a huge pleasure. And like I said, we're big fans, and so we watch your YouTube show too. And we're we hope to keep up the communication with you because you've been such a great mentor, friend for us. Yeah, I'll say this: shout out to the Portal Moms. Is that what you call them?
No,
on the live channel.
My mom, yeah, she's always on there checking it out. The Portal peeps are out there. Yep, for sure. But thank you guys, and yeah, we'll have to have you back on, and we'll continue this journey because I know there's so much more to share and unpack with this. But it's been an epic run. So thank you, gentlemen.
If you're in our neck of the woods, come down and we'll do a Skinwalker Ranch experience.
That's on the bucket list for sure. I'm hoping we can get something done this year, but I'll be in touch with you guys because I'd love to check out some of these areas with you. That'd be amazing. So yeah, we'll be talking.
Always got an invite.
Oh, thanks guys. Perfect.
Well, the only time she really turned with that famous was when I rode across the creek and got down off the horse. She turned to look at me.
All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us here on tonight's show. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please feel free to follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Paranormal Portal Radio, as well as finding us on Twitter. We're on Twitter at Paranormal Portal, PORTL, and we'd love to have you stop by our YouTube page and subscribe and check out our shows there. We got hundreds of shows, Journeys into the Paranormal Portal, so I hope you check it out, guys. We're over there at youtube.com/Paranormal Portal, so hope to see you guys soon. We'll be back, of course, for more podcasts in the coming days. So we love you all. Be good, be kind, be nice, take care of each other, help each other out, find the magic in every day, and remember to laugh as much as you can.
I don't like it in here, David.
Neither do I. But you're going to remain here for some time.
That was Harold's voice.
That's right.
We thought you were...
Dead? Hardly. But you two will be very soon.
Here's a gun, David.
That's right, Sawyer's gun. Planned this very carefully, David. When the police arrive, they'll find the three of you dead, and I'll be wounded. Tell them that Sawyer was behind it all, that he killed both of you out here, and that he came into the house searching for me. It was a fight. The gun went off, and he died.
Then you killed Emily and Sawyer.
Yes. I'm going to kill both of you, too. You don't think I believed all that hokum I fed you about Uncle Amos coming back, do you? Of course not. It served its purpose. And now you'll serve yours.
Phil, look out in back of you.
How stupid do you think I am?
Uncle Amos is coughing and slipping.
Get out of the way, Phil.
Get out of the way!
remember what Uncle Amos said when he was dying. That he'd come back and settle with us. The coffin. I wonder if it was just an accident that it slipped out of the crypt. Or whether Uncle Amos really did come back.